Hello and welcome to the next Lukozer retro game review video. And yeah, we are still doing Laserdisc arcade coin-ops. This one is Galaxy Ranger, which was the sequel to Astron Belt. And in a way, rather like Astron Belt, it was another of those games that was a bit late coming. On the title page there, it was saying copyright 1983. In fact, this game didn't come out until 1984. I mean, bearing in mind that Astron Belt itself wasn't released until 1983, but they were already working on this by the time Astron Belt finally emerged. Now, as you can see from the track mode here, it works in pretty much the same way. Indeed, if Astron Belt gave the impression that no expense was spared, which in 1983 it certainly did, this one gives you more the impression that no expense was spent, because it doesn't use any film footage from any actual known films. They got around it by asking Toei Studios, who had actually done the film Message from Space that was used quite predominantly in Astron Belt, but they got them to record some new footage exclusively for this game. As you may have seen from some of those images there during the attract mode, they didn't exactly go all out for making it look particularly realistic. Now, whilst Astron Belt always had a sort of, I think, quite a professional look to it, this has a very cheesy look to it. The music, for one, the title Galaxy Ranger is not exactly fantastic either. And well, as you can see, the actual Laserdisc footage itself is simply not as good. Now, another way that they rather cut corners as far as the like budget for developing this game goes, is that they enabled it to use the original Astron Belt cabinet. In fact, all it did was if you had an Astron Belt cabinet, you simply changed the disc in the player and a couple of the EPROMs, and you would turn Astron Belt into Galaxy Ranger. And although it was never particularly popular, it didn't appear in very many arcades. It just seemed to be a bit, well, it was almost a bit of a waste of time. No one was all that interested, really. Nobody was going to buy like the actual standalone cabinet, that's for sure. So I think that's one of the reasons why Sega decided to go the route of being able to update your Astron Belt cabinet into this one. And it still didn't prove to be very popular. This is not one of the more well-known games. Now, I have a feeling that the Laserdisc is already fucking up, just like the Astron Belt one does. So I'm going to have a go, but before I do that, I'm going to reset the emulator so that it will run properly. Right. Okay, right, so let's bung a couple of credits in, have a continuous game, and here we go. So, on launching, you straight away see that, yep, it does indeed play very much like the first game. In fact, when I say very much like the first game, I mean identically. It is, however, a bit more sort of, there we go, psychedelic, shall we say, compared to Astron Belt, especially with scenery like this and some of the explosions. So I don't remember this bit at all. So it looks like we've landed on the planet's surface, and that did work properly. So it's oh fuck, they are still every bit as accurate with their shots. That bit is extremely easy. That target is so huge and it doesn't go anywhere, so you know, hitting it is fine. You need to be careful when you're going through these sections here, because you can fly into those, well, they're supposed to be mountains. I mean, you can quite clearly see the fact that this is a very small scale model. I'm sure I'm hitting those fuckers. Right, so now we are approaching one of the large motherships, which is launching these like mine things at me, which are bloody difficult to avoid. It does indeed look like we are going back to the whole business of the fucked up Laserdisc timings. Mind you, it does also now seem to be sorting itself out. Now you see what I mean here about the rather psychedelic look to it. The explosions, the current location that we are in and everything else. So, I don't know, maybe some hallucinogenics played their part in the development of this one. So, I mean, although it was a sequel, and of course the idea with sequels is to try and improve on everything, like so many other sequels, it failed. It doesn't have the sort of appeal of Astron Belt. The visuals are certainly not as good. I mean, the explosions are still fine, you know, some decent meaty explosions like this, but when it goes through its sort of psychedelic stage, that was ridiculously easy. Oh well. And it didn't fuck up too badly, which I'm quite pleasantly surprised about. Now this second time round, this is probably going to be a hell of a lot harder. There we go. Now I completely lost the thread of what I was saying. Oh yes, the comparison between this and Astron Belt. So Astron Belt, I mean obviously it had the benefit of being the first, and so you know this had a much harder time. I think you have to choose the direction you want to go here. There we go. Which is something new. That doesn't feature in Astron Belt. That explosion was a little bit late, but that actually wasn't a fuck up. That was okay. I think that was as well, but now I'm not sure. And that I think is game over, but nevertheless I've got the top score, which would be great if it saved it. There you go, isn't that wonderful? Right, well, let's have one more go. Right, so yeah, we can continue. Okay, let's continue. So, I mean, the psychedelic sort of appearance and everything is clearly there to try and make the game look, you know, at least slightly different to Astron Belt, rather than, you know, being exactly the same sort of thing. It fails, and it just doesn't look as good. In parts it looks a bit like watching an episode of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the BBC made one, and in other places it looks like you're watching Top of the Pops. I would have preferred it if they hadn't bothered with all this psychedelic sort of stuff. I also wish the psychedelic levels weren't quite so long. This actually is not fucking up, which is a pleasant surprise. So although it did have an iffy sort of area, this isn't one of them. Oh, that's not that. those fucking things again. Now, the ship that you're flying, I don't think looks anywhere near as good as in Astron Belt, and the sound effects of the graphics overlay are certainly not as good as in Astron Belt. I have a feeling that, yeah, okay, so we're now getting ready for the third mission. But what it does have in its favour is that one go of it does last longer than one go of Astron Belt. If you complete Astron Belt, you can finish it in about 10 minutes. This will last a lot longer. Because with Astron Belt, if you destroy the main ship, you can... Now it's starting to fuck up again. You'll get the chance to like for it to wrap around, and you can then have a second go. But that's it. If you complete it the second time, then it's game over anyway. With this, well, I'm on my third. It's now starting to fuck up by the looks of it. Yes. So, but I don't know if it goes on to 4 or what. It doesn't look like I am going to know, because again, the yeah, the video was starting to fucking completely go haywire again there. So, well, the bottom line is it's not as good as Astron Belt. I think the yeah, it needed to do more for it to really grab people's attention, rather than just serve up the same thing again. And yeah, it's if you're going to do a sequel to a game that was quite revolutionary, the sequel has to do something equally as revolutionary, and in 1984 they just couldn't do that. So although the first game was met by, you know, people who just stood there, you know, open mouthed, just gawping at, you know, holy fuck, what is this? With Galaxy Ranger it was, oh, it's Astron Belt again. So yeah, it needed to do more than it actually did. So I mean, it's not a terrible game to play, but it just doesn't grab me as much as Astron Belt did. But then few arcade games do grab me as much as Astron Belt did. So I'll give it 6.5 out of 10. It's not a bad game, as I say, but it's not the original. You know, Astron Belt is just the one that really grabs me, and I think that applies to everybody. They just couldn't get into this one quite as much. So there you go, that is Galaxy Ranger. 6.5 out of 10. It's a reasonable game, but it just does not have the appeal of its predecessor. So that brings this one to an end, but before I go, it's fairly obvious that people are going to be expecting me to do reviews of Dragon's Lair and Space Ace and all that. Well, at the moment I can't, because the Daphne emulator requires you to have the DVD of Dragon's Lair or Space Ace 2, which I don't have. But I do have all 3 of those games on Steam. The trouble is, using Shadowplay to record footage of any of those 3 games results in you getting a completely black screen. You can hear all the audio, but you can't actually see anything. So until I find a way around that, yeah, it's the reviews of those games just aren't coming, I'm afraid. So, but I'm working on it. So anyway, that brings this video to an end. So we will see you at the next one.